You were on Netflix's Outlast, right?
Yeah, oh my God, I always forget I did that. So the top of Everest, and in every expedition I do, I hold a little sign that says dyslexia gave me grit. And it's so important to me. I tear up every time because it's why I'm there. And this is part of my whole grit mentality. But for everyone, like my final thing is just really trying to empower people with understanding that every single day we have a choice. Who we show up as, who we want to be, making the effort. We have the choice. Grit is a choice.
This is Megan, owner of Dyslexia On Demand.
And I'm Eryn, owner of Advocate to Educate.
And we are the Don't Call on Me podcast.
We are here to talk about dyslexia, to remove the stigma, to hear what families really go through, and to share their stories.
In both of our businesses and personal experiences on a daily basis, we listen to people telling their stories. Many of heartbreak, many of struggle, but most all have a silver lining, even eventually.
It's all about the stories. The more we share, the more we realize we aren't alone and we are a community. No, a tribe standing together. Today's episode is sponsored by Advocate to Educate. We help parents navigate through the confusing maze of special education in public schools in California. We support families starting as early as preschool through 12th grade, creating individual education plans to support the specific needs of your unique and amazing child. To learn more, go to our website, advocate2educate.com.
Today's episode is sponsored by Dyslexia On Demand. Dyslexia On Demand uses only the highest trained dyslexia therapists, and it's all one-on-one and individualized to your child's needs. The best part is that it doesn't matter where you're located because it's all virtual. Visit us at dyslexiaondemand.com to learn more. Welcome back, listeners, to the Don't Call on Me podcast. I am so excited to have another Megan here today to tell her story. So if you are a listener who is impacted with dyslexia, if you have a child with dyslexia, I think that this story is going to definitely be very empowering for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
So, hi, my name is Meghan Buchanan. I live in beautiful Vail Valley, Colorado, and I am a dyslexic ADHD rocket scientist, adventure athlete, and keynote speaker.
That is so cool. We're going to take you back a little bit. We know that you are dyslexic, and we want to kind of dig into what that journey looked like in terms of the age that you were identified, what you feel like that, how that impacted you, your journey. Did you get intervention, and just kind of how that all parlayed into who you are today?
I am one of the very lucky ones that actually got diagnosed early. It wasn't a great story and it didn't make my life, my life was definitely not easy, but I am very grateful that I was diagnosed. I actually had I have a brilliant cerebral family. My dad was a Rhodes Scholar to MIT in physics and engineering, and my older brother and younger sister just freaking brilliant. And I was reading probably at the age of 3. I did my first little computer program at 5. But it's really around that age of 7 when you're in second grade and learning to spell and read and write that my mom noticed that I wasn't quite the same as my brother and sister. I also happen to have a teacher who did not like me. His name was Mr. Wolf, and I did not make that name up. And he did not like me because I would not sit on his lap to go over test grades. So my mom always just taught me to believe in my gut. And so because of that, he did not like me. So when I struggled, he pointed me out in front of the class. He was actually extremely emotionally and verbally abusive to me. Yell at me in front of the class, sit me in the corner, call me retarded, stupid, idiot. Oh my gosh. And you're so young and you don't have a voice for yourself yet. You don't know to fight back or what to say. And I was so scared to tell my mother because he told me, he's like, you're an idiot and I'm going to tell your parents. And to me, I already just knew like, I don't want to be that person. So I stopped reading. I refused to read anymore. That's where my mom picked up and she's like, what is happening? Like my child is very, very smart. She's so inquisitive and creative and joyous. And it just stripped me of all that. And so we went on to pediatrician. I was tested and they came back with the Miss Buchanan, we're so sorry. Your child is dyslexic. She's not going to achieve much academically. And I remember my mom never said swear words, but that look in her eye, now as an adult, I understand that look in her eye was like a "Ferk that." She took me home. She sat me down and she's like, sweetheart, you can be anything you want to be. You are just going to have to work harder than everyone else. And that starts today in this house. And my mom did her best. She was such an advocate and she did her best to normalize it in our home. And so that was a safe place for me. And so, like I said, it didn't make the rest of everything you have to go through as a dyslexic easier, or societal views or the challenges. Even with an extremely supportive family, I still felt so much shame and embarrassment because I knew that I was different. As a little kid, I grew up in the state of California. At that time, if you were diagnosed with that, you were put into special ed. And special ed then was a very different thing that it's umbrellaed under now. But back then, it really was with people who had severe developmental issues. And my mom was just like, I know my kid is smart. She is really smart. Every school year, she'd go and talk to the teacher ahead of time. She'd print up all that was known about it at the time and be like, here is what my daughter has. She's extremely smart, and she wouldn't, my mom figured this out of do not call on her to spell in front of the class. Do not call on her to read in front of the class. If there's any issues, I want you to call me. I mean, what an amazing advocate I had in her. And then as I got older, I mean, she's so brilliant. She really taught me through the years. She would fight my battles for me, but then she would teach me slowly to have my own voice and fight my own battles, and really started trying to push me in high school to be like, well, you need to go talk to your teacher about this. So that by the time I actually went to college, I was able to be like, this is what I need. This is my story, that sort of thing. I thought, if I just try, we all have that mindset of, if I just try harder, I can beat this so I still hid it for a long time. And then kind of had to pay the consequences. I had a longer journey to actually graduating college.
Well, that's okay. So do a lot of people.
Yeah.
But if you are a parent listening to this and a lot of times feel kind of lost, feel overwhelmed in all of the information and how you can best equip your child, I think that one of the morals of the story to take away, if you take nothing else away, is that if you can just parallel what Megan's mom did, the way that she behaved, and in terms of really supporting her and making her understand there's nothing wrong with her, educating the people around her or your child, I think that is just even the bare, that's all you have to do. Because if you hear how that really filled, your cup, I think right there, that individual probably completely changed the trajectory, because words are really, really powerful. And you were at the same time as hearing some really negative words from, not only the pediatrician, but also creepy second grade teachers, etc.
Oh, and all through high school, college professors, everyone. Yeah.
You're also hearing something that's balancing that out. And I think that one of the messages we always want to spread is that, teachers need to understand that their words make every single bit of difference in terms of how a child sees themselves. And
Absolutely.
So it sounds like, and the parents do the same thing. So I just think that if we do one thing, it is just to be able to equip that child with positive words. You're already beating yourself up enough as someone with dyslexia.
Well, and that's the other part of this is what you're saying. Yes, absolutely. But there is something else that parents really need to recognize, is that no matter how much support and love and positivity you give that young person growing into an adult like I did, we are still going to struggle with our self-esteem, the doubt, the negative voices, the shame, and the embarrassment. And I think sometimes you can feel as a parent like, well, if I just support them more, they won't feel that way. Unfortunately, that's not the way it happens. Like, we still feel all those things because of everything else coming out from us or towards us from the negativity. And it takes just going through the process and learning those skills of confidence to finally get rid of that. So don't ignore that your kid is still feeling all of that and experiencing it so truly. I will have people who they want me to talk to their kids in college because they're like, my kid was in engineering, they dropped out and they refused to get accommodation. And they're like, why on earth would they refuse to get accommodation? Well, I get it. I refused it in the beginning as well, too. Because again, I still deep down felt it was my fault that I wasn't smart enough or good enough. And I kept thinking, if I study harder, I know that I can overcome or not be dyslexic anymore. And it is, our brains aren't fully developed. I mean, we're not rationally thinking, but I felt that way too. I went on academic probation after my sophomore year. I was kicked out. I took a year off because I was like, nope, I'm not doing this. I'm going to do something else. And after working 2 minimum wage jobs for a year, I was like, nope, going back to school. And then after long talks with my parents, I was like, I will get retested. The university at the time, you had to be retested, which costs money, which I didn't have. And I knew it was just going to be 2 weeks of such embarrassing testing. But I finally was like, I will do this. And I got accommodation. My grades got better. And I crawled over that finish line with a degree in aerospace engineering. So I was still denying who I was that whole time. And so that's the thing with parents. You can be so supportive, but there's still going to be that underlying just low self-esteem because of what you have to go through to get there.
It's kind of like body dysmorphia in a sense, because I have a lot of great educators around me that are dyslexia focused. And, I hear them say a lot, they are not dyslexic themselves. And I hear a lot of times, like, I'm not too worried about their self-esteem. We just got to get them like reading, writing, and spelling, and that's going to make them feel better. No, I do not believe that at all. I do believe that if you catch a student early enough, like my son's very, very lucky. He started at 4 years old learning the way that he needed to learn. So he doesn't feel the same trauma that I felt in school. If you provide intervention early enough and you can bypass some of it with being very honest and direct with them when they're 4 years old and having those conversations, he's lucky he has me and grandpa and auntie and people in his life that are dyslexic that we talk about it very openly. But
Yeah.
when other kids don't get that, it's two-pronged. You got to deal with the self-image and the self-esteem at the same time. As kids, we will compare ourselves to whatever fits our negative thinking and see and find evidence, like, I do suck, or I am bad at this, or see, I told you I can't, do well on a test, even if I study twice as hard, because there's that one test you bomb or whatever it might be. And it's the self-dialogue. And even when their reading, writing, and spelling gets better, that's kind of why I bring up this body dysmorphia. You might, be severely underweight, yet you look in the mirror and you're way overweight. But that, in my opinion, is the trauma coming up, and we have to deal with that.
And it's something where people would always say to me as an adult now, they'll be like, oh, well, you had dyslexia. I'm like, still have it. They're like, no, but you're an engineer. Yeah, I still have it. But it's learning accommodation, coping skills. And the major part is really learning the self-esteem around it, because I am triggered constantly. And I try to share with people with everything I've done too. I'm like, let's not get this wrong. I don't wake up like, like just knowing I'm going to nail everything. Woo! I mean, I have everything that happens. We're human. We constantly have the negative voices or that little kid, that little dyslexic kid triggering you all the time. Like, see, you can't spell that still. You're an idiot. But all of this, and what I talk about it with grit is it is all about learning to take that head on and practice it and walk with that fear to the point where every time you're triggered, which is daily, you are able to just be like, not today. Like just to be able to push it back down and be like, well, maybe I can't, but I'm doing it anyway. And that is the real for parents who don't have dyslexia and you've got, your kid, you're never going to make it go away, the self-doubt. The key is teaching the child to grow into an adult to be able to cope with and push aside the doubt every time it comes at you and move forward and go for what you want anyway. I talk about how great my mom is, but my dad was also really amazing. Here is this literally smartest man alive but so kind and compassionate. And he gave me the love for the outdoors. And I just remember my brother and sister, everything came so easy for them academically. They weren't as into hiking, but my dad loved hiking. So that was our thing together. And I get that sparkle in his eye hiking with him. And he taught me the days that I would feel so overwhelmed and bad, we would go hiking. And that's what helped build my confidence in something else, where I felt myself, I could be myself. I wasn't ashamed out there. I was proud of myself hiking on a mountain. I was so fast. And that part really helped me deal with it. And of course, that's carried on to being an adult. But honestly, I kept it hidden. No one in high school knew because, again, I'm smart. I have a genius IQ. Dyslexia doesn't bother that. I would go to class. I listened. I was top 10% in high school. College, it hit me. I could not keep up with the reading, but in high school and, elementary school, I could. So I hid it. But part of that and part of the shame is I always felt misunderstood. And I would end up in tears all the time after school. And whether it was relationships or teachers or professors, even then getting into my first job, I always felt misunderstood because I kept hiding it because I was so ashamed. And I didn't want the stereotype that went with it. So all through my 20s and my career, no one knew. And it wasn't until I started climbing mountains again, really, and that confidence and I building back up again and achieving these goals outside of it, that I really paralleled it with my career and who I am.
This getting back to who you are prior to the trauma, I look at, and I keep going back to your pediatrician, and whether or not the words are verbatim, what she said or not, that's kind of irrelevant. It's how you remember the experience of your mom hearing that news, whether you were there or not. That's the impression that it left on you. So shame that pediatrician. But I hope they know better now. And it's something that we need to keep educating on. We need to just continue to push and push. I wanted to ask you something about college and accommodations, because you said that, once you went to college, it was a whole different ball game. I had the same experience. So I'm curious, when you brought up your accommodations in college after being tested, what were those accommodations specifically that helped you get through rocket science?
Yeah.
I laugh when I say it because I only use rocket science I don't, and we need to know what it is. I think for both Megan and I, we need to learn that today. But I always say I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm like, what is even, I don't even know.
I know, because I need to know what I was pretending to be.
Yeah, right.
And no one knows, because no one would have any follow-up questions because they were too scared to look stupid. So
yeah, it's a good way just to shut the conversation down. Although I will tell you, and look, and there's a whole nother side conversation on not just being neurodivergent or dyslexic, but also being a dyslexic woman.
Yes.
Because dyslexic men and women are treated differently. And in my experience and a lot of statistics and research, and Aerospace engineering has a lot of different fields you can go into, but rocket science, it's a lot of different things as well. I used to work on independent verification validation for the Titan and Atlas rockets. And then I worked for Lockheed Martin for a while, and I did human space flight. And so I was in charge of, for human spacecraft, doing vulnerability and survivability techniques into design. And so there's a lot that went into that. I will say, as of today, I actually work on GPS systems for Raytheon Technologies. And so I am not working on rockets today, but a lot of my career was. So it just depends. But my mom loves saying it. My friends love saying it. So.
Well, you're clearly really smart, because I think I took in like about half of what you even just explained in layman's terms.
Thinking the same thing.
I love that. It's amazing.
So it was very different at the time. And, again, I was tested and diagnosed as a child. So in college, they're like, well, for you to get accommodations here, again, we have to retest you, and like I was saying before, I had to work while I went to school. It was tough. And so I put myself through school, and so the money to pay for this testing, like I just didn't have it. And of course, my parents are amazing. And when I had that year off and went back there, of course, they're like, we're going to pay for this for you to get retested. Okay, great. So I went back, and it's so funny. The first time I went to the disabilities, and again, this is a long time ago, center, I remember they're like, well, tell us the problem that you're having with your math and your word problems. I'm like, lady, this is not normal math. This is engineering applied mathematics. I'm like, this is not a train leaves from station A at 9 a.m. And so she gave me this book that I was supposed to read about how to prioritize my reading better. And I was like, I am never coming back to this place again. I cannot keep up reading. So when I went back, got tested, oh, you're dyslexic. Well, thank you very much for reconfirming. So what I got was untimed testing. And then I got a proctor. And so finally someone could read me the test, the questions, instead of, because we all know, and the majority of engineering exams are multiple choice, and they all could be right, but you have to pick the right one, or true false with double, triple negatives. So I failed every test, because our heads go down this rabbit hole of, I'm like, all of these could be the right answer, but which one's supposed to be the best? I don't know. Depends on the day. What am I wearing? How do I feel? So the big thing though, that was a double problem for me though, was in the School of Engineering. I mean, that is a school of absolute excellence. There are really brilliant people there. And I also had a lot of professors that were much older, and they didn't understand a lot that we understand now with dyslexia. And because of the fact that I came in and I'm super, super cheery, bubbly, blonde, their opinion of me was I just wasn't trying hard enough. And so now that I have this accommodation, a lot of the professors then would be like under their breath, you think you can bat your eyelashes and at me and get your special little test? I'm going to fail you. And I was like, that's awesome. And this is part of where, my parents really taught me. I would call them just crying. It was a struggle. And they're like, you've got to go get some advocacy in the engineering school. And I met this man, he's a dean, Dean Sherman. Oh, I don't think he's with us anymore, but that guy stood up for me. And I went to him, and he helped me then battle, at least stick my ground. And with the professors going top, like, nope, she gets on-time testing. This is what you're doing, and I'm watching you. And so that was a great, great lesson too, to get that advocacy. And we're all so embarrassed. It goes back to that shame. We're so embarrassed to ask for help. I did though, and it paid off. And I was able to graduate. When I talk about this in talks I do, I always refer to it as I crawled over that graduation line, but I made it. I made it over.
Professor Sherman, like, clearly is such a pivotal person. I love when we interview people. I feel like every single time we get to hear the name of someone who was just life changing in the story. And Professor Sherman, like, ultimately, in a way, you helped you to see how you could be all of these other things, because all you need was that piece of paper. But clearly, like, your potential was enormous. We just had to get to that checkpoint. And so I'm
Yeah.
so happy to hear that you had that experience that
Yeah.
brought you to eventually become all the things that you are now.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, and especially for young people or adults, anyone listening. So yeah, I crawled over the undergrad line, and then I started working right away because again, I was done with school. I freaking hated it. I needed to start making money. I was super poor, and I started working as an engineer and doing well. But then I went back to, luckily, my company at the time, Lockheed, had a reimbursement program. They were going to pay for my master's, and I was like, oh man, if I'm ever going to do this. And that was such a big risk. I was like, I'm going to do this again. And I was probably at that point, I started working towards that maybe when I was about 27. So going to work full time and then doing master's courses in engineering management. I was so terrified, but I was ready to take it on. And I had an amazing GPA that second time through. Because I had learned the confidence to go through, I learned to space my classes. I took on as much as I could take on. I had accommodation. I asked for help. I was open with my professors, and it made a difference that second time through. It does change, and your life skill and that confidence builds, and you can take it back on again. But really, it's just having that confidence and understanding what's going to work best for you. Like you were talking about, you find what method works best for you and you honor that.
Yeah. And the self advocacy piece, I want to bring this back to the power in advocating for yourself and knowing that it's okay to need a little bit more time or a lot more time or whatever. And when you're out of K-12 education, I truly believe there is a bigger shift in being an adult and being able to ask for what you need. Of course, there's going to be the negative Nancy's or naysayers, but I do feel like once you're more of an adult, then I don't know if it's because they take you more seriously or you're not a child, or I don't really know. Anyways, all that to be said, it's just funny how it works out. Like you can have an experience where you get taught to advocate, yet I absolutely endured so much trauma from the experience of me comparing myself to others. That was really the hard part for me. It was real. I felt really like it was so unfair. That's what it felt like as a child to me, just unfair. Like, why do I have to work this hard and other people get it so easy?
That is where we get into the gifts of what dyslexia brings you. Because
yes,
people are not born with grit. People are not born with this amazing self-confidence. You have to go through the struggle and the pain to build that foundation and those walls for yourself. And those of us who have learning differences, we got to learn that very young. And so by the time we are in college and we get older, we have learned to advocate for ourselves and we have the confidence to finally speak up. And that has truly become, and I always talk about this, what was my greatest pain and weakness is truly my greatest strength today. And I'm so grateful for it.
You're so right about the grit piece, because you don't, and I talk about that all the time. When you see kids having to work as hard as we do to access the same information that everybody's given, and of course there's all sorts of diagnoses where there's other groups of kids working just as hard. I don't want to minimize that. This is the subject of our podcast, right? But that grit, when school comes easy, and I mean academics, right? Or let's say academics and socially, it's just pretty easy. Where is there that opportunity to learn grit? And when things come easy, then you just kind of expect that everything is going to come easy. So you don't get that practice.
The first job I had out of college was for Boeing in Seattle, and it was an amazing position. What it was at the University of Colorado I went to, I was an engineering ambassador, and there was like 20 of us through the school that were kind of the social engineers that could talk. And so, so we would do, like, when alumni came, we would give tours. We did a lot of stuff, but it was a way that I could really be a part of the School of Engineering and feel good about myself, right? And so through that, there was this summer program for high school kids, and so we were kind of counselors, and we would give them a sampler. But then they paired in all these people that were alum but out in industry, and my group was paired by another pivotal person in my life, Jamie Childress. And this guy is so creative, and he was really outgoing, and we talked, and he shared with me what he does, which is what I ended up kind of doing. And I shared with him, and he's like, well, why don't you come do an internship with me? I said, well, my GPA doesn't meet the minimum requirement. And he's like, what? We'll get you through that. Don't you worry. And he gave me a shot. And what he saw in me was the creativity. And because he did, military aircraft vulnerability, and they'd lay up all these composites and smart ways and vulnerability and go blow things up. And as a college guy, I'm like, oh, you could do this and this. And he's like, this is awesome. And that's another benefit of dyslexia is we are very around, we've been told no so many times, and we have to find back doors and different ways to get in. We think way outside the path that we're shown. And so this is really great in engineering. And I got this internship, and they offered it only to 2 people from the university. And it was an amazing opportunity. And I remember one of the things he told me is he's like, don't let anyone fool you. He's like, I never hire straight A students because they don't know how to work. And he goes, I love C students because you're here, obviously you are still going because you're so passionate about it. And again, not to knock the people who work so hard and have straight A's. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. But he was just meaning it in general. Like, I want to hire people that are going to come in day one and know how to work hard and speak up for themselves and make a difference.
I love you talking about the gift of dyslexia. And this is something that we've started trying to ask people that we interview, because there's a lot of focus on that concept nowadays. But I think that when you're going through the journey of dyslexia, you get really exhausted hearing people say, oh, but what about all the gifts of dyslexia? Because it really doesn't feel like that. But I think the way that you share your story, you really help to lend perspective to the fact that sometimes you don't see what that gift is until the very end, till your frontal lobe is all come together, and you can really synthesize and you can reflect on how the crap stuff is what brought you to who you are now. And I think that as adults, we have that ability to do that, dyslexic or not, right? Because, of course, we're not trying to minimize anyone's story. There's tons of people who have experienced lots of trauma that ultimately, help you to put it all together and go, oh, I get it now,
yeah.
Right? But the way that you tell your story, I think that really helps to show that, so that we can, as non-dyslexic people, when we are dealing with, kids, especially who have dyslexia, or parents, and trying to advise them on how to speak to their kid, is that sometimes we have to put a little bit less emphasis on that, oh, but your brain works in so many amazing ways to help them, kind of balance the yuck part that they're going through, and realize to empower them that eventually you're going to see what everybody's talking about.
Yeah. And it's about being honest. It's being honest with them too. And when I talk to schools, I'm like, I am going to be honest with you. This is going to suck. I'm like,
Right.
You are going to hate yourself at times. You are going to feel like an idiot. You are going to wish that this wasn't a part of who you are. And I'm like, I don't think it's not. Because even without dyslexia, again, I am such a believer that it is through the struggle and the pain that we grow into amazing human beings. I, at this point, am so grateful for what I have gone through. Now, the stuff that comes my way, this life will never stop throwing challenge and adversity at you. Never. It never stops. And so to think that, oh, I just wonder when things will get easier. It doesn't. But when you have learned the skills through practice and pain to be able to just navigate through it, and like we said, like walk straight through it, identify it, move past it. What an amazing level to finally be at in your life. And then you can live calmly through the chaos. And so, yeah. And then, it, again, just kind of tying it to the outdoors for me, it was a thing where, I think my parents kind of had it in their back pocket where I'd go to try to climb this mountain and maybe weather was too bad. We had to turn back, or maybe I wasn't strong enough that day. And I'm like, okay, let's go back next weekend. I remember my parents tying it back to be like, so that was hard, right? I'm like, yeah, you want to go do it again, even though you failed. I'm like, well, I didn't fail. They're like, so why do you think you fail in school? So, I mean, there's all these ways to like tie it. Like when you're passionate about something, you don't mind working really hard. And my parents just try to parallel that with me. And then I really was doing that as an adult as well. If I'm willing to scrape my knees and feel horrible on the mountain, but keep pushing forward, why can't I do that with the things that are hard because of my dyslexia? And so it's another great way of like, I am going to push through this pain and I'm going to get to the other side. And it almost like it frees you. It just frees you when you are no longer afraid of that failure. Because that's the other thing. We're going to constantly fail. We're going to constantly fail unless you're really not trying for anything. And that just seems like a really sad way to live.
Through your sharing, you've shared so many of the questions that we usually try to directly ask everybody. So you've done an amazing job.
Yeah,
but one thing I want to see, do you have one piece of advice, or what is the one piece of advice? Because I know that you speak to a lot of audiences for a child with dyslexia.
Oh, we've talked about so many things, but I think the advice, again, is that transparency and honesty and support, where you can support them, but also be honest and explain how this is going to play out. Be honest about how hard it's going to be and, the self-doubt that you're going to go through, but then give that child the tools to start coping with it and move through it. Don't avoid it, move with it and through it. For parents, again, don't sugarcoat it. Be honest and then work with them and hold their hand while you're working through coping with it.
I can just relate to being honest with kids and letting them know in advance, this isn't going to be easy, but that's okay because I'll be here with you. Not only telling them it's going to be hard, if we can show them what it looks like, I think that's another piece too, just so that they really know, what do you mean it's going to be hard? Because these are little guys trying to wrap their head around how is this going to be hard? And so I think vulnerability is such a gift that we can give. And I don't know about you, but I have never talked to a child that is dyslexic and shared with them my stories, and they've been turned off or like not wanting to engage. Every child I share with, all of a sudden, all eyes on me, and we're talking, and instantly they understand. I know who they are at their core, and we become buddies right away just with that commonality. Because I think it's that unspoken, I understand the shame. It's okay. Like you're going to be okay. I remember when my dad used to tell me like, Eryn, you're going to be okay. I promise you're going to be okay. And I'm 42 now. And finally he gets to say to me, I told you, didn't I? Like, look, you have everything right? Everything you've wanted. Here you go. Like, look around. I mean, all the things that matter, family, friends, health, we're so lucky and so blessed, but it is really great to be able to have that insight, to be able to give them the gift. It will be okay, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And that's also okay.
Well, what you're just saying too is that they, and it may not make sense to them yet, like you said, But when you keep talking to them and they become aware of it, when it does hit them, they have those lessons in their head. And I think it's so important, and even, learning differences aside, any child being able to see someone that is like them achieving things. Every kid needs that. Adults need mentorship. Like everyone for one person to be like, that's like them or has something like them, to be like, oh, wow, they did this. It turns everything for them. That little seed can grow. And it's just, that's why so much of this is why you guys are doing this podcast. That's why, I do speaking and different things. If you can just open someone's mind into, I could do this maybe. That's what this is all about. It's so amazing.
And there's two powerful role models right here on the screen too. So, yeah. Megan, tell me more about where other people can find you. I know you're a motivational speaker. I know you've written a book. I know that clearly just through my time with you, you're really, really powerful. So tell all of our listeners about that.
Yeah. So, and we already talked about it. So GRIT, and I spell it GGRIT, which I love that story because number one, grit is already trademarked and it's a very common word. And so and the 4 just wasn't enough of an acronym. And then I thought, oh, spelling grit wrong would be kind of funny. And so, grit is gratitude, growth, resilience, integrity, and tenacity. And those truly are the 5 keys that I figured out I've used my entire life to overcome any obstacle that was thrown at me or to achieve any goal that I've set for myself. And it truly started as being a child with dyslexia. And so I would love it. I have a website, GGRIT. On the grams, it's at GRIT as well. And I love it because I'm the adventure athlete side of it. I am about to complete the Explorers Grand Slam. And that is the world's 7 summits, the highest peak on every continent, which I have completed both versions of that. And then it's also a thing called a last degree ski to the North and South Pole. And that's a self-supported, in crazy conditions, 100-pound sled behind you, me and a team making our way to the poles. I've done the South Pole, so all I have left is the North Pole. And the Explorers Grand Slam is such an amazing achievement just for women. Only 12 women have ever done it. And that is another thing for me of, well, why does it matter? I'm like, it matters because it's hard and you can do it. And so I cannot wait. I leave on March 25th to give it a try. So hopefully we'll get through that. I do share my journey on Instagram. I'm always posting about a lot of helpful tips on how you move through struggle and pain and inspire with positivity. So I would love for anyone to contact me. It'd be fantastic. And I love speaking to corporations, schools, groups of how you can apply grit to your life to achieve the extraordinary, whatever that is for you. If it's Everest, awesome. If it's getting through high school, that is an amazing achievement as well, whatever it is for you.
So Megan, thank you tremendously. You are going to be such an inspiration for all of our listeners. And we want you to reach back out when you're done with all of your adventures and let us know, yes, I've once again crawled over the finish line, because you will. And just thank you for doing the good work, because you are helping us spread awareness, and we're just very appreciative.
Of course. And I have to tell you, so the top of Everest and in every expedition I do, I hold a little sign that says dyslexia gave me grit. And I know, and it's so important to me. I tear up every time because it's why I'm there. And, and this is part of my whole grit mentality, but for everyone, like my final thing is just really trying to empower people with understanding that every single day we have a choice. Who we show up as, who we want to be, making the effort. We have the choice. Grit is a choice, so choose to rise.
Thanks for joining us on the Don't Call on Me podcast. If our stories resonate with you, connect with us on social media and YouTube. Share your stories on don'tcallonme.com and help us enhance understanding and support. Your story has the power to inspire change. Together, let's strengthen our community, one episode at a time. Until next episode, keep listening and keep sharing.